Picture the Trojan War, except the gods aren't on a mountain. They're in Davos, Moscow, Tehran, and Palo Alto. Dugin whispers destiny into Putin's ear like Athena to Odysseus. Soros funds the battlefield like Ares, arming both sides. China and Iran play Ares and Hera, stoking the flames for their own glory. China and Iran play Ares and Hera, stoking the flames for their own glory. The technobros sit above it all like Zeus, controlling the very clouds we shout into. And us, we're the foot soldiers. We bleed, we argue, we cancel each other, while they rewrite the map of reality itself. That's the game, folks. Welcome to the Influence Club.
Twitter or get your news from the liberal mainstream media, you may have gotten the impression that the president's supporters are abandoning him in droves over Operation Epic Fury, his war to prevent your grandchildren from having to face off against a nuclear-armed Iran. Our hapless president has been dragged into this war against his will by the nefarious Bibi Netanyahu, according to people like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Megyn Kelly, and now Joe Kent, a counterterrorism official who resigned this week amid an FBI investigation into his penchant for leaking government secrets to Carlson. Trump has betrayed everything he once stood for, they say, and all the young people know it. In light of their opposition to Trump, the mainstream media has been only too happy to amplify these characters.
The younger generations, I'm Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z are very much against this war, and so when you talk to people on the ground, that's how it comes across. It's very generational, and the younger generations are completely against it. It's 100% a betrayal to what MAGA was supposed to be.
Alas, none of that is true. The narrative that MAGA is split over Iran, beloved by the liberal media and the anti-Israel far left and right, is complete fiction. Far from a betrayal, poll after poll after poll has found massive, overwhelming support for the president's strikes on Iran among Republican voters, upwards of 85%. An NBC poll of voters who backed Trump in 2024 found 90% support for the war in Iran and a 100% approval rating for the president. A new poll even asked point blank who Republicans trusted more, Kelly and Carlson or the president. The results were pretty decisive: 84% for Trump, 6% for Carlson. Womp womp. That's what we learned about America this week. The would-be emperors and kingmakers of the far right have no clothes. The war in Iran hasn't just taken out Iran's ballistic capabilities, it's nuked the fiction that these media personalities on the right wield any power. The podcasters, content creators, and YouTubers and Twitter personalities who claim to represent MAGA actually do nothing of the sort. They are influencers with no influence, not on the president nor on his followers. The podcast wars, as they've been called, have always been more a media turf war than an ideological one. Many seem to have decided that the way to try to grow their audience is to go down the same road as Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens, podcasters with big audiences whose antipathy extends beyond Israel to all Jews. But unlike on the left, our compatriots on the right have absolutely refused to buy in. Support for Israel is rising among Republicans. Even people who get their news from podcasters overwhelmingly back the president in Iran. It turns out people who make money off of online engagement are not the best arbiters of where the American people are at. Sure, they get millions of views online, but the internet is available globally, and our enemies are only all too eager to try to undermine us by aggressively engaging with anti-American content. You can learn a lot more about what's really happening in America by going to church or sitting in a bar and talking to your neighbors for half an hour than you can on Twitter.
I do think that world is dying because I think the systems are played out, and the systems that I love and support, liberal democracy. I think it's not growing anywhere in the world. There's no, and here's one measure of it. There's no country that I'm aware of in which the legislative body is getting stronger. They're all becoming weaker. The legislative body, of course, are the most democratic of all bodies. But, you know, it is the voice of the people. It's the people's house. But that's true in every country with a system like ours, or a parliamentary system. And in every country that I'm aware of, those systems are becoming superfluous. They're becoming the Roman Senate. And that is a measure of a bunch of different things. Maybe it's the end of a life cycle. Maybe it's an expression of people's frustration with the awkwardness of the democratic system. It doesn't work very efficiently. Whatever it is, it's a global trend where power is vesting in the executive, where people are less free to say what they think. This is throughout the West.
It's all around the world, especially in East Asia. And we're using up this rather small inventory of boutique weapons that we have. Where does that leave us? And then there's the question of our allies. We can't protect our allies. In fact, we've turned our allies, these are the GCC states, the Gulf states, into giant magnets for Iranian drones and Iranian ballistic missiles.
Benjamin Netanyahu dead. In the last 48 hours, I have been flooded with text messages, phone calls from people in the military, from people in the White House, Joe Rogan earlier, just about 30 minutes ago, saying, what do I think? So I'm going to tell you what I think right now. The Fortress of Zion is a giant underground base right there in Tel Aviv. And it got hit by one of the ballistic missiles last June that literally exploded like 100 feet away from Netanyahu's prime minister's office and destroyed it. Then they sealed the whole area. Google imaging won't show it. And we know that at least 5 ballistic missiles have come into that area and have appeared to hit the ground. But Israel has been basically blacking that out. And other Arab countries have been arresting journalists, people that even show missile strikes in their countries. So it's very hard to get the facts in. What we do know is that for 3-4 days or so, Netanyahu hasn't been seen. Then he suddenly puts out a video earlier today that does look AI, that to me looks fake. I'm not saying he's dead. But this is what hit me when I saw this. Do you think Netanyahu's dumb enough to actually be on the surface or even the second or third level of that base that the Iranian missiles can't get in the lower areas of? It's reportedly like 10 levels deep. Do you think he would actually be above ground to be hit? I mean, the Israelis get hit every night in their major cities other than Jerusalem. But it's off limits because it's the holy city to Muslims as well. And the Israelis in general aren't seeing big casualties because they sleep in the bunkers now that they have under all the major cities. But you know, it was Netanyahu and the Likudniks that killed Yitzhak Rabin. And that's how Netanyahu stayed in power pretty much for continually for 25 years. He's been kicked out a few times and always gets back in. It'd be the perfect cover story to have the Israeli opposition that's backed by the Rothschilds kill Netanyahu and then blame it on the Iranians. We have one of the leading rabbis, come out a few weeks ago and say, we need to blow up the Dome of the Rock Mosque to build our third temple that's built on top of the second temple that Titus destroyed in 70 AD, the Roman general, under orders from Pompeo. Not Pompeo of today, Pompeo of then, 2,000 years ago. And they are going to rebuild that. So he said we should blow it up and say an Iranian missile did it. So that's just an example of some of the thinking that goes on in false flag land. That's pure speculation. It's not a conspiracy theory. We don't know the facts. Netanyahu will probably pop up and probably alive. But it's completely reasonable in this fog of war to ask that question. Also, I don't like the mullahs. And I also knew this war would expand and be a quagmire, which have been proven to be right. Now they're getting the 82nd Airborne, the Marines ready to invade the Strait of Hormuz to keep it open. I mean, this is out of control. I wish 2 weeks ago when it started, though, that it was going to start. I wish they would have fallen, but I predicted they wouldn't. So in this larger fiasco, Iran is the underdog. And everybody just can't help at a gut level kind of wish this wasn't happening and kind of feel for the Iranians, even though their leadership is bad. Because watching the little guy get pounded and bullied on, nobody likes it at an instinctive, really spiritual level. So people want to believe some of them that Netanyahu got hit, because watching the Iranians sit there and only take it just doesn't seem fair. I don't want Netanyahu to be dead, because you'll turn him into a martyr. That is the worst possible thing that I want. I want to stop these wars. I want to stop what's happening in Gaza. And I want Israel to stop manipulating our foreign policy, which now they're out in the open doing, and it's just out of control. I love the head of the ADL yesterday, like, Jews aren't involved and Israel's not involved in this war. It's anti-Semitic to say it. Come on, Israel. You're the main lobby pushing it. There's some other lobbies want it as well, military industrial complex, and people want to block the Chinese IMEC corridor and Belt and Road and BRICS. So there's an alignment of Western interests that want this, but Israel and the Israel lobby is the reason this is happening. Israel launched the attack 14 days ago to drag us into it. They admit that. So just cut the crap. So I don't know if Netanyahu's alive or dead, but I know this. This war is far from over, and Iran is willing to fight to the death, and that puts them in the driver's seat. God bless you all. Continue to cover this all at Real Talk Shows on X. And also,
why are you working with Russian state media?
Because the only people who offered me a job were the Russians.
So then when you became a sworn officer of the United States, what was your intention? Because you have to know that by affiliating your name with Russian state media, you might get to say anything you want, but that doesn't mean that's what goes to air. That is exactly the foundation for how Russian covert influence operations happen.
Aw, poor CIA. Fuck the American government. What have they done for me? What have they done for my children? It was the CIA that put me in prison. What in the world do I owe the CIA?
It was your decisions that put you in prison.
It was the CIA's law-breaking that put me in prison.
It was your choice to highlight the CIA's law-breaking to media that put you in prison.
There we go. So we're in agreement then.
Your children's, they live every day under the protection of the United States. They have all the benefits of American citizens.
Wow.
And you're sitting here saying...
You're a true believer.
I'm a true believer in the fact that we have to serve the American dream. We have to serve the American purpose. That's what we're here to do.
And that's exactly what I'm doing by opposing the American government.
Why are you working with Russian state media?
Because the
So I have a little bit of resentment when people say, you shouldn't have quit. You should have stayed in there and kept fighting. I'm like, well, where the fuck are you? Why weren't you? Where were you?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean this offensively to anyone, but posting on social media it helps because you get you push your opinion out, but it's not stopping anything. None of it is stopping. Me voting no over and over and over again on these certain bills didn't stop anything. People using their voice on social media, it hasn't stopped anything. None of it is stopping anything. And I think that's the reality that I realized, and it was eye-opening, is I can spend my entire life, throw away my entire life in Washington, D.C., lose my relationship with my own children and my mother and my very dear friends, lose every part of me because I'm in Washington and I'm fighting. And guess what? Our country goes to hell anyways. So I was like, okay, when I piled all this together, I looked at it and guess what? I signed the term limit bill. I was a co-sponsor every year. I believe in term limits. I don't believe in career politicians. So again, I actually put my own beliefs and actions into words, and I was like, fine, if you all want to treat me this way, the president wants to treat me this way, the Republican Party wants to treat me this way, and I'm out here on a battlefield virtually by myself day in and day out getting murdered, no, I don't have to be here anymore.
I'm a supporter of Putin, so I'm transmitting the will of of conservative society, of Russian identity. I'm not formulating this individually.
Aleksandr Dugin is a Russian political philosopher who's been called the Putin whisperer. He's got Vladimir Putin's ear, and he's really influential in shaping Russian policy at the highest level.
You are known as Putin's Rasputin, and I've even seen Putin's brain. So he has listened to you in the past.
The base of this affirmation is precisely the correspondence between what Putin does and what I always say.
I'm Shahar Baran, and I produce for Leslie Stahl at 60 Minutes. In 2017, we shot an interview with Dugin as part of a story we were reporting about the Russian disinformation campaign after the 2016 presidential elections. We ended up not using the interview. Sometimes that happens when we interview more people than we can fit in the broadcast. But I never forgot the interview with Aleksandr Dugin, especially after Russia invaded Ukraine. In 1997, Dugin wrote a book called The Foundations of Geopolitics, which we've heard has been very influential in the Russian military. It may have even been taught in their academy. So I wondered what in his worldview might illuminate what Putin is doing now and his goal in this war right now in Ukraine.
So in 1997, you wrote a book called Foundations of Geopolitics. And in it, you talked about how Russia should return to being a global superpower. Talk about that. Explain that.
I always believed, and I believe in the future greatness of Russia, because Russia was always and tried to be a superpower. It's our dream, not to rule the world, but to be recognized as one center of decisions with others. So our dream is not unipolarity, Russian unipolarity. It is the dream of decent multipolarity, to be one pole among the other, not to be the unique pole. That is very important. And I consider a return to the greatness, or return to the status of superpower, not as being the first power in the world, but one of the most important decision makers. And in order to do that, I think that military power and weapon, including a nuclear weapon and the other kind of weapon, is not enough. We need to use diplomatic means, and more than that, we need a kind of spiritual sovereignty. We need to be free and liberated, not only physically, as a state, as a people, but as well revival of Russian logos, of Russian spirit, of Russian identity. That is much more important.
This Russian identity is a key component of an ultranationalist ideology Dugin espouses called Eurasianism, because Russia is both part of Europe and Asia. Dugin thinks Russia should embrace this geopolitical uniqueness and dominate both spheres. Dugin has set Eurasianism in direct opposition to the West and to liberalism. In his 1997 book, Dugin wrote that for Russia to rebuild its power globally, it would need to use disinformation, destabilization, and annexation. He said one of the targets for Russian annexation should be Ukraine. In Dugin's mind, an independent Ukraine stands in the way of Russia becoming a transcontinental superpower. But that wasn't the only prescription Aleksandr Dugin had for Putin back then. Here's what he told us in 2017.
Let me ask you something else that you wrote about in your book. You proposed that Russia annex Ukraine. You said that Russia should encourage Britain to leave the EU, Brexit. You suggested that Russia make Iran an ally. Now, it does sound as if Mr. Putin is following your blueprint. All of these things, right out of your book, and he's doing it.
That was the same thing that they have said, introducing me in the Johns Hopkins Institution 20 years ago in Washington. So I agree there is a similarity. More than that, but I have developed in my vision, Eurasian vision, that is much more, that is larger than what you have mentioned. That is only first steps in order to.
But he followed
restore...
your first steps. He followed exactly the first steps.
That's take too long. So he is in the absolute position of absolute power, because we are living in a monarchist society from below. So that is not Putin who imposes on us monarchism or authoritarian rule. We demand from him to be much more authoritarian than he is. So he a little bit disappoints us because it takes too long.
But he did the first steps.
First step in the 17 years. So in the 17 years, you could change the globe, change the.
He listened to you, but he's going too slow.
Okay. Too slow, yes.
Participant Jackson Hinkle. Jackson, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
Hi. Yes. Hi. So Jackson Hinkle, multi-million follower on X, but probably more famous for being banned by YouTube. Over to you, Jackson.
Thank you. And thank you to the professors for being here. And I'm in Moscow right now. I think I'm maybe one of the only people that has both of the professors' books in English here in Moscow.
We shouldn't be too much serious in our relations. Let them try. Let them try to make America once great again. Let them try to avoid the conflict. Let them try to pacify Russia and Ukraine. It is impossible. We know that, but let them try. Let them try to put the sanctions and tariffs against everybody who challenge the imperialism of dollar. Let them try. That is very, very interesting, very, very challenging. And I think that we should say, oh, we all have already seen that. No, we never have seen that. That is something new, and let it be like that. Let it be. Let it happen. Let the globalists flee from United States to Canada, and Canada to turn into 51st state of United States. Let them try to do for Doggy, what Vivek and Elon Musk want to do. That is totally crazy, and that is why it is so beautiful. I think let them try. When I see Kesh Patel, I couldn't believe my eyes. So that could be real. So what this strange guy says, that is very, very exciting. I think all the rest, but more or less, the rest that is going on in the future nominees of Trump. So let these people try to improve something, and I think all the rest will depend on the realism or strategical depth. What will happen? But they have the right to start something anew. So there's the downfall of the Western unipolarity and the rise of the multipolarity.
And so you're watching the end of the global American empire, the unipolar world. And so the death of the unipolar moment and of the institutions within the evangelical movement, American Protestant Christianity, are going away, but they will be replaced by something better and purer.
We're living in the crucial moment of this emergence of multipolarity,
including Russia, China, Iran, and say it's time for a new world order where we are partners in this relationship.
I think that's the wisest possible advice and probably the only path that preserves civilization.
So much disinformation has built up around the war in the Middle East that it's become extremely difficult to trust anyone's statements. We're seeing negotiators assassinated right in the middle of talks and agreements broken almost the moment they're signed. It feels like dealing with Israel and the United States is equally perilous, whether you negotiate with them or refuse to. In many ways, negotiating may even be the more dangerous option. At this point, there are no longer any obligations, red lines, rules, or norms. What we're facing is raw, brutal, and almost infernal aggression, where words have lost all meaning. But the United States has always behaved this way. The packaging may have changed, but the core has remained the same. The Iranians do not accept defeat and will not surrender to the raw force of a bloody aggressor. They simply cannot do so. It goes against their very nature. They live by the ethic of Karbala, the readiness to accept earthly loss in exchange for a greater spiritual victory, much like the early Christian martyrs. It is a profound culture of sacrifice and unbreakable resilience. When the United States assaults this society with such open and vicious cruelty, the response is not fear, but total consolidation and extraordinary courage. Right now, the White House is dominated by a group of hardline Protestant fundamentalists, mostly Baptists and Calvinists, who believe we are living in the end times. In their dispensationalist worldview, the primary enemies are the Iranians, Muslims, and Russians. Traditional Christians, especially Catholics, but also more moderate and rational Protestants, are horrified by what they see unfolding in the corridors of power and inside this new ministry of war. How will this end? Either Trump will deliver a devastating blow to multipolarity and set the process back decades, that possibility cannot be dismissed. Or conversely, his extreme aggression will accelerate the collapse of Western hegemony, triggering chaos, a deep split within NATO, and quite possibly civil conflict inside the United States itself. In this game, staying on the sidelines is no longer an option. Those who refuse to participate simply allow others to decide their fate for them.
Some rationality behind what they're doing and buying some of those lines about, oh, geopolitically, this is why we have to do it. This is what they're saying that you're not being told about. And they're not hiding it from you. You're not looking for it. You haven't had anyone tell you. Here's another quote, perhaps Dugin's most famous quote. And none of the people boosting him tell you this one, but they know it if they've Googled. Russia should introduce geopolitical disorder into internal American activity, encouraging all kinds of separatism and ethnic, social, and racial conflicts, actively supporting all dissident movements, extremist, racist, and sectarian groups, thus destabilizing internal political processes in the U.S. There must be some rationality behind what they're doing.
Philosopher. So around the country it's different, but they have a broad overall strategy. They all cooperate. They might hate each other and try and steal each other's members, but they have like a lot of Christian denominations, you know, they will not like the other denomination. They're not real Christians. They're not real Christians, you know. Same with the communists, but they will all stand together against common threats and with common purpose. But then you've got the overall coordination, which is coming from Venezuela, from China, from North Korea, from Cuba, even from Russia today. So it goes above. These groups are being directed from overseas. Make no mistake about that.
Well, where to begin? A lot in that opening, and welcome. I'm Brian O'Shea, your host here at Investigate Everything. I have been head down in the research of what the hell's going on in the world. I did write something up so we can stay on topic because there is a lot to cover. And let me just say, there's never one enemy, but there's always enemies. So before I read what I wrote, just to stay on track, in doing this research, I realized Americans, myself included, well, I'm not included in this, but there's a tendency with a lot of Americans, whether they're your neighbor, people online, to not believe that people want to kill us, to not believe that people want to take over and be the hyperpower, be the, unilateral hegemon of the world, which we are. So when I see these comments from what I have nicknamed the Dugin Network, which is the multipolarity crowd, we'll get into what that means. They know what they're doing. A lot of them do. And we're going to get into that. There's like 200 pages of notes. We're breaking it up into several episodes. But it's important because knowing what is shredding your mind on a daily basis, knowing why you feel so horrible when you get off Twitter, when you've been on there for too long, that's the most important thing. But knowing that people are plotting against you, that's super important because there's always something you can do. And a lot of people are doing it. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is sometimes these plots against you and me, Americans, they seem so big that we feel like they're insurmountable, like there's nothing we can do just as individual people. But that's where you're wrong, because you are the target, and each individual mind is the target of all of our enemies. So what you can do is just do what I hat tip to the people supporting Dubai, do what they did. Just keep drip, 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 repeating and repeating the redundancy of your message. And that's, no, this is bad. That's not American. Yes, I'm going to vote in the midterms. Yes, my vote matters because it does. No, Tucker, our seat in the world is not coming to an end. You want it to because you get paid to say that, but it's not. And no, Aleksandr Dugin, the United States will not cede anything to you second and third placers just because you want to run some things again. Okay, and that's what he's talking about with multipolarity, is for the United States to draw back so we can have these multipolar regions. And you have to keep calling people out on that stuff. Okay. The other thing that is depressing, and it takes a lot of time to get over, I myself am guilty of it, going down rabbit holes. So when you look at things like the Charlie Kirk assassination, or you look at things that are going on even with the Epstein files, these are all important things. But they are not going to change the course of the world. Let me tell you what I mean. And this is with all due respect to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, as well as the late, great Charlie Kirk. What this means is, one is a murder investigation, a state-level aggravated murder investigation. That's the official title. Okay, the other one is a federal investigation. Okay, and believe it or not, I'm not saying they're telling you everything, but I will say they can't. Okay, not everything is a conspiracy, but there are people out there that want to make it a conspiracy. Why? Because, you know, conspiracy sells. Not only that, for the Duginites and Mr. Dugin there, and you'll see this in many of his statements, it frustrates you to never have an answer. It demoralizes you to never have an answer, to think something's always being hidden from you, to think that, man, we worked so hard and we got Donald Trump in, and now look, he's not listening to us. He's not releasing everything. Ladies and gentlemen, they can't release everything. There's active criminal investigations. You can't. Do you really want Candace Owens having access to everything so she can manipulate you to get clicks and to get paid by her bosses? I don't think so. At some point, I'm not saying trust and not verify, but trust and verify. If you don't agree with the FBI is doing, don't just go on Twitter and confuse the subject. You know, request information. Do a state-level FOIA. Do a federal FOIA. They won't always answer it, but do something that has some meaning and some impact that some people that make decisions are going to see. But the real reason I bring that up about these things not having an impact is what's having an is you have to recognize what does have an impact. And you know what does have an impact? What has an impact is so many of these influencers that you've seen in that opening video, and there's a method to that video. Some of it's old, some of it's new. I want you to see the network because it's a structure. And it's happening right now. And it's not just happening from one network. There's multiple networks. And there always are multiple networks. That's the thing. Whether those networks are the technocracy, the Duginites, the multipolar people, the Chinese 2049 China Dream people, state-sponsored Russian, Iranian axis of resistance, and even the U.S. government, George Soros. These are all active networks, and they all are trying to own your reality. And only you can own your reality. Okay? And yes, there's even networks for America First. Okay, those networks I've seen have tended to be more organic. There are people like me who are like, no, that's BS. I think Trump is doing a great job. I'm not getting paid by anyone, but I'm a witting part of a network of people that are spouting off the truth. Or like the Dubai networks that you see in terms of like the Dubai tourism marketing. Yeah, they mounted a really good campaign to say, no, we're not an unsafe place to come visit. But there are people that live there that love living there who are organically pushing that stuff out. So back to the rabbit holes. You can't go down the rabbit holes because that's where marketers want you to go. They don't want you issuing FOIAs. They don't want you asking, Loggerhead, you're going to love this. They don't want you asking why the skies do seem really cruddy lately, like a lot more so than when I was a kid. They don't want you asking that. They don't want you asking how come Pfizer put out a announcement for a new tick vaccine, a new Lyme disease vaccine, 3 days after all the major news networks announced that it's going to be the worst tick season ever. They don't want you doing that. They don't want you going to Seth Holhouse's Man in America and watching his great last episode that revealed all these government programs to basically genetically engineer ticks. They don't want you there. They want you thinking that people in Chabad are levitating and eating babies, and they're going to come and get you. I go to Chabad. They're not, and they're not. And I'm not Jewish. I just like going. They want you thinking basically it's like this. It's like a circus. They want you looking at this ring, and they never want you looking at the other rings and what's going on. Okay, and they make money off this. And the people who own the networks make money or have long-term financial strategic goals and power goals too. You have to remember that. So don't go down those rabbit holes, and definitely, ask yourself, okay, why? Regardless of whether you agree with it or not, why is this resonating with me, and why am I seeing it everywhere out of nowhere? That is the creation of reality. This is a classic covert influence technique. We saw it with COVID. Let me explain. When you are doing covert influence, this is actually known by the name of psychological operations. A lot of people confuse psyops and covert influence with propaganda. Propaganda is merely the record you put on the record player. That's the broadcast. That's the content. Covert influence is owning the audience. It's setting the table. It's building the record player. And that's what you see happening. There's a couple steps involved: framing, and then the way it disseminates out through different tiered levels. I can't go into why I know this, but I do know this. And this is not like hidden knowledge scam or anything like that. You can look at my LinkedIn profile and probably figure it out. I can't legally say who my clients were when I worked for government contracting firms. There's an NDA. That's why I can't. So it goes back to like, why is it resonating with you, or why is it not resonating with you? And these are all questions you have to ask. And look, I'm guilty of a couple things here. Okay. I'm guilty of, during Biden's time in office, starting to let my guard down about the Russians. Starting to let my guard down. And why did I do that? I'm not going to speak for you. You know if you did or not. But why did I do that? I'll tell you why. Because the left hated them, and I hated the left. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I fell into it. I found myself saying, yeah, we should side with them. Okay, and that's what's happened here, and that's what you're experiencing. A lot of conservatives are looking at the messaging coming out of Sargrad TV, where the senior editor is Aleksandr Dugin. Okay, a lot of the messaging that's coming out is, hey, you know what? Those globalists are your problem, or as Dugin likes to call them, Atlanticists. They're your problem. Okay, and they're going to make sure the United States is run by their people. And they're not wrong. Of course, the globalists want that. And by globalists, I mean basically your open societies network. And that's scary. Like, if you think like what happened with Biden being in office, there's a natural evolution to make poor decisions on who your strategic allies are. And I feel that a lot of us in MAGA did that, maybe to ourselves, but there's other people that you're seeing now who bought it hook, line, and sinker, and that is the Russians are our friends. They might be, but they're still our enemies, and they're still our strategic enemies. And what does every country want? Do they want what's best for you or for them? Of course, they want what's best for them. We want what's best for us as Americans. Israel wants what's best for Israel as Israelis. Russians want what's best for Russians. The Chinese want what's best for Xi Jinping because he tells them what they want. But you get my drift. But we bought it. Well, I'll speak for myself. I bought it. I found myself thinking, yeah, you know what? if I got to choose a side, I'll choose Russia over Ukraine. I never asked myself, do I need to choose a side? No, I don't, because it's not our conflict. So where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this is we've let too many people on all sides of the aisle. We've met too many of our enemies into our network, into our ecosystem. On the right, we have let very, very dangerous Russian influencers and Russian hired influencers to influence us and divide us. And we're seeing it happen. And there's a method to this. I'll go into it in a structured way here in a second. There's a method to it. On the left, they let too many of the globalists in through things like USAID and lots of money. On both sides, China gets in there, because China is China. They like to see who's going to win, and then they pick off the winner who's now weakened by the battle. These things happen, and they happen all the time. Let's never forget that our own CIA started as the OSS, and really their main mission was influence. Okay, their main mission was propaganda. Okay, and it's not bad. Think of propaganda as marketing for your country, guerrilla marketing for your interests as a country. Okay, that's really what it is. But these are all apparatus that are set up, and they're only as good as who's driving them. They're only as good as who's at the controls. So we have massive capabilities, and so do the Russians, especially in influence, and so do the Chinese. And in the right hands, these can be good things, but in the wrong hands, they could be our nightmare. Okay, so when you go down rabbit holes, what happens is you get frustrated. You don't get answers. You have doubt. You hate it. You're like, what else are they keeping from us? What else are they hiding? What else are they going to do to us? We were all there during COVID. Okay, and then someone comes in and says, "Hey, I'm an investigative journalist, and I've got contacts, and I'm gonna get us the answers." And then people say, "Great, let's follow them." And then you never get the answers because they string you along, and as they string you along, their audience grows. World War III, how many times have you heard that? We're getting close on the Charlie Kirk assassination. How often have you heard that? We're going to figure out who really did 9/11. How often have you heard that? What are some of the other ones? The Epstein files, they're covering up. It's a global Epstein network. Well, that might be, but you don't know that, and neither does that trusted voice who has no more access than you do. So the point is, investigate everything. That's why the show is called that, because if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And you know damn well it's hard to say you're wrong. It's hard for me to say I was wrong about some of the Russian influence. I've worked with Russian soldiers. I really like the Russian people, and I do. I'm not just saying that to be politically correct. I do. I respect them. They're pretty tough dudes, and they can drink like you would not believe. I think I told you the vodka story a long time ago, but it's pretty hardcore. But I respect them. I respect all soldiers, actually. But that's okay. I respect many people, but there's a lot of people I might go drinking with or go shoot with that I want to let into my house. And we can't let everyone into our house anymore. We only can let Americans into our house and people who put America first into our house. And if people who were born and raised here suddenly are America last, they need to go find a different house, in my opinion, because I'm kind of tired of that too. Let me read to you what I wrote so you can see where I'm going with this, because as many people state, I lose the plot often, get emotional. But before we do that, I see a lot of people have been waiting. A lot of people have come here, and I haven't shown up. And so let me just answer some of these. So we have Frank, if you doubt that they hate us and want us dead, look at Mamdani in New York City, of course. Good point. And how the leftists want us dead. Our enemies are here also. Yes, our enemies are here. And Frank, I can tell you, our enemies are on the left and the right. Okay? They are on the left. It's not just the left. It's the left and the right. We'll get into that in a sec. But let me answer these other people because everyone's been waiting. No audio. Wait, there's still no audio? Please tell me there's audio. Okay. Whew, you scared me. That was a long. Big rabbit hole. JFK Jr. still alive. Hey, no longer tired. Sorry, I missed you earlier this week, and the other 2 times I didn't show up. A lot of research, so I'm sorry. Welcome. Yeah, that's one of them. 9/11's one of them. The J6 pipe bomber, they're trying to make that one of them. These are what I call the pillars of conspiracy to lead people astray. Okay, to lead people away from things like voting at the midterms. Okay, like that's so important. I cannot even stress that enough. And when you hear people saying don't vote, you have to stop listening to them. You have to. Because let me just break that down. If we lose the midterms to the Democrats, they will impeach Donald Trump. All of these programs that are happening will be done. They will open the borders wide open. If you think 2020 through 2020, first month of 2025 was bad, imagine what it's going to be when you don't have a senile old fool in the White House. You have someone who can actually think and is beyond just like ignorantly evil, just really evil. Like these people, they don't care. These are the globalists. Those are the globalists. And at the same time, we have to be careful, when we win the midterms, to not look the other way and say they've got this. No, we have to constantly, not just Donald Trump, but J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard. We got to keep a good eye on her, especially given her history, because she does lean towards that multipolar world. That's very important. If people could change, and I'll say, okay, if you change, I'll trust but verify. But that's what I'm saying. It's not just the left; it's the right too. And there's some dangerous things being said. Okay, when people are spouting off white Christian nation, and we get that a lot. I'm like, no, I don't want to live in a theocracy, a racist theocracy at that, because that's what that is. Okay, there's Jews here, there are Muslims here, there's atheists, there's agnostics. That doesn't make them bad people because they don't believe in your religion. White Christian nation, and you got to ask yourself too, which Christian are you talking about? There's so many of them. I'm Roman Catholic. Do you mean that Christian or a different Christian? Like, what are you talking about? But these things, you see them coming and they're confusing, but that's the point. Okay, that's the point, is division. So yeah, left and the right, Frank, definitely. Big rabbit hole, yes. I don't believe it, but know others who do. You don't believe what? First time here, great show, have been led astray, voted for Trump 2 times. Now I am afraid of his plans. Well, I'm actually not afraid of his plans, but welcome, Linda. And I'll explain that in a second. If his plans are what I think they are, I'm not, actually. And here's what I think they are. I think they are to maintain our position and strengthen us as the global hegemon, as the hyperpower. Hyperpower being the word when there's not 2 superpowers. I think his goal is to control energy, okay, and to control oil. Because if you think about the damage and the evil that oil and the wrong people controlling it has caused, it's something to think about. Now, look, I know a lot of people have been kind of raised and groomed into this, and myself included, into thinking, hey, live and let live, let's just give everyone their share, or their area, and we leave them alone, we'll stay to ourselves. But the world doesn't work that way, and we've seen it. Okay, this isolationist thing, you can't have isolationism if you have globalism. You can't have the economy we have without globalism. Globalism is here. It's been here for a long time. You just have to learn how to navigate it and be the strongest player in it so someone else is not controlling that game. I mean, I would love it if we could just all keep to ourselves and, do American things over here and do Russian things over there, do Chinese things over there, or whatever. But that's just not reality. If we keep to ourselves, we still get attacked. Everyone does. It's not like war just popped up when America and Israel became allies and Israel was formed in 1948. It's not like it was Shangri-La before then and there were no wars. I mean, come on. I'm not saying you said this, Linda, but you get my point. But what I'm saying is it doesn't work that way. So really quickly, here are the, let me just read it to you so we could get there. It's a bit flowery, so I won't read all of it. But what we're talking about tonight. Okay. Before we go into the whole Dugin ideology, we got to first map out the battlefield. Imagine, if you would, not the ancient plains of Troy, but our modern world as Olympus, a cosmic arena where gods, I didn't write this, by the way, and Dallas didn't write this either. Actually, someone wrote this for me, but they used my notes. Let me wade through it here. An arena where gods clash with not with thunderbolts, but with economic webs, military might, information warfare, and ideological spells. These are the influence wars. 4 competing visions for the soul of humanity. 4 gods, each their own champions, the influencers, the thinkers, each with their own champions, the influencers, the thinkers, the power brokers who fight in their name. And we, the normal citizens of the world, we're both the foot soldiers marching to their drums and often the unwitting victims caught in the crossfire of their grand designs. First among them thunders the celestial dragon of Beijing, China's 2049 vision. Led by its emperor-like figure, its goal is clear. Become the dominant global power by 2049, known as the China Dream or China Rejuvenation, where China seeks to be the global hegemon by 2049. They speak of a community of shared future, but with China firmly at the center. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, military modernization, and the control over Taiwan, they weave economic their aim for control over Taiwan. They weave economic dependence across continents. Aligned with them, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Pakistan, Cambodia, Laos, and many Belt and Road nations in Africa and Central Asia and Central Europe. Opposing from the West stands the unyielding American hyperpower, Trump's America First vision. Amen. This god wields peace through strength, using superior military and economic might for unilateral dominance. The U.S. is the unchallenged hyperpower. Key allies include Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and now, following dramatic shifts, Argentina and Venezuela, where a new government installed in January of 2026 was realigned with Washington on oil and security. Third is the enigmatic multipolar oracle, the Dugin multipolarity vision. Its aim, end American dominance and forge several equal power centers around the world. Rejecting Western liberalism, it champions spheres of influence, core backers, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Syria, Belarus, and Cuba, though Cuba now strains under heavy pressure. Who benefits? Russian and Chinese state-linked energy firms, defense contractors, commodities traders, thriving in fragmentation, and Iran's regime with its proxies, should it survive. Finally, the enlightened weaver of open societies, the Soros Open Societies vision. Inspired by Karl Popper, it seeks to spread liberal democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and multilateral cooperation worldwide. Aligned nations, Canada, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Nordic countries, Australia, New Zealand, and most of Western Europe. It funds NGOs, media, education, and progressive causes. Beneficiaries include Soros himself, he funds global tech and finance corporations and advocacy groups. Yet it poses a challenge to the unipolar strength by pushing policies that can erode national sovereignty and borders. But listen closely to their true voices, as if eavesdropping on the gods' private councils. From the multipolar side, we respect sovereignty, in theory. But if you choose the open society path in our sphere, that's betrayal. They will respond with pressure, economic leverage, info wars, even force if needed. Small countries don't get to invite NATO or liberal networks to our borders. That would be the multipolar people. From the open societies camp, Every country can choose its own path until it chooses to close its society. Then we fund opposition, journalists, civil society to push back. You can choose anything as long as it stays open and liberal in our vision. Both of them preach about freedom and respect, yet both move to crush choices that threaten their order. As of April 2026, the board has shifted quite a bit. Venezuela was forced into the American camp after Maduro's embarrassing removal from power in his silk pajamas. Cuba resists amid blockade, but clings to the multipolar side. Mexico pragmatically cooperates with the U.S. on trade and migration, but guards its sovereignty. And they've got plans of their own, too. And beware the cracks between supposed allies. China's hierarchical dream, Beijing on top, clashes with Dugin's multipolarity of equal poles. Russia and China are tactical partners against America, but in Central Asia, the dragon quietly displaces the bear. They paper over rivalries for now. The American Titan's aggressive resurgence, strikes, blockades, reasserting supremacy, has enraged the others. The multipolar camp, once hopeful, now sees betrayal. Dugin himself calls Trump a narcissist who went neocon. The open society gods decry the assault on multilateralism. China condemns violations of sovereignty, supports Iran diplomatically, but avoids direct clash. This, my friends, is the landscape of the influence wars. 4 visions, 4 gods battling for dominance, their champions whispering your ears through media and think tanks. And you and I, we pay the price in our daily lives, our economies, and our freedoms. Tonight, we zero in on one of the most sophisticated fronts of this war, the Dugin Network, the decentralized machinery promoting Russia's multipolarity aims deep inside the West. And we'll just take a break right there. Okay, so my chat is on fire. Good. Great. Okay, keep going. I will. Let me drink some water. Oh, nice audience count. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out so late. So the Dugin Network, what is it? Okay. We'll get into who Aleksandr Dugin is, and I'll put all this on Substack. The Dugin Network kind of operates like a modern Hydra, structured in 4 tiers, with Aleksandr Dugin's philosophy flowing through every level as the hidden ideological current. Whether the participants are witting architects or unwitting foot soldiers, the network frames everything through anti-Western, anti-liberal, and often Israel, quote-unquote, Israel first lenses, meaning they're not saying Israel first, they're mocking the Israel first. They're saying that, America puts Israel first, and that's why you can't trust them, which is nonsense. At the base are the originators. Okay, so these, now we're getting into the tiers, originators, okay? What I've determined from researching this is it finally hit me. It's the same tiers, every single influence operation in the world at the state level, which normally trickles out into the private business level because people like me end up, going private into the private industry. It trickles out into HHS. They all kind of have the same 4 tiers for all influence operations. What are they? Well, at the base, you have the originators, okay? Researchers and outlets like Whitney Webb, The Gray Zone, Mint Press, and antiwar.com. These are the ones that supply the raw, heavily sourced material on intelligence networks, elite blackmail, and foreign lobbies. This is meaning, like, these are your, I don't want to call them conspiracy theorists, but these are the people that really go into those kind of fringe topics, and they don't do a bad job. I'm not even saying they're all wittingly doing this to hurt anyone. We know the Gray Zone, Mint Press, and antiwar.com definitely are. But, I'm on the fence about Whitney Webb. I know who she is. But they tend to only focus on one area. So, for instance, let's say they get a lead that the dancing Israelis were responsible for 9/11. That is all they will research. This goes back to what I've said about never try to prove a theory because you'll always be able to prove it. that's what a lot of these originators in the Dugin network do. They, like Max Blumenthal and the Gray Zone, they're prime examples. They've determined that everything bad in the world is because of Israel, and they have very, very big topics in a whole weirdly funded UK-based Gray Zone that has a lot of info. It's well written. It's professional operation, but they tend to not look at alternate theories. Okay, they might touch on them in investigations, but they've decided if there's a forest fire in Argentina, Israel did it. They've decided, Trump went to war because he was scared of Netanyahu, which is ridiculous. The list goes on. You get it. So you got Mint Press News, but they create these tomes of stuff, and then people start borrowing from them, the other tiers. Most are witting, deliberately crafting narratives that advance the multipolar worldview. Above them are synthesizers. Now, this is really interesting. This is the part that, from my experience, which I can't get into, I'd forgotten about. But synthesizers tend to be like long-form podcasters. Okay, they'll take an idea. They don't really research it. They just take an idea and they synthesize it and they make it mass consumable. So it really, really spreads. These are the synthesizers, long-form podcasters, and essayists like Ian Carroll, Daryl Cooper, who's the historian that Tucker had on. They connect the dots into compelling stories that make dense research feel revelatory. Then come the legitimizers. Now, these are the ones you see the most. Okay, you saw a lot of them on my opening. Credible bridge figures with military intelligence or mainstreaming media backgrounds, such as Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly, and others. They lend institutional respectability and carry these ideas into broader conservative and libertarian audiences. Finally, the amplifiers. High-volume social media voices, meme lords, and hot take broadcasters, Alex Jones, Stu Peters, Jackson Hinkle, and many, many more. And I would say Jackson Hinkle has his own special category as well. And I would say Alex Jones also falls into an originator overlap as well. They emotionalize the messaging, turn clips viral, and they push it into outright conspiratorial territory. This tier has the most unwitting participants, which makes sense. We all retweet things. Driven by engagement rather than ideology, yet they scale the entire operation. Overlaying all of it is a familiar pattern. Coordinated and emergent anti-Israel media campaign. We're just talking about the Dugin network. Anti-Israel media campaigns using tactics straight out of state-sponsored playbooks. Narrative framing. Israel first. They're putting Israel first. It's not our war. Mossad, Epstein links. Digital amplification on TikTok and X. Ian Carroll got his start on TikTok, actually, and Reels. Institutional pressure and indirect support from Russia, Iran, and China, and I would even say Syria. These are not random voices. They are champions and foot soldiers of the multipolar oracle, working to weaken America as a hyperpower from within and tilt the influence wars towards Russia, China, and Iran, primarily Russia's multipolar vision of the world. Tonight, we're going deeper into these rabbit holes, even though I advised against that. So stay with me on this. All right, so what are your thoughts on this? Linda, I pray God gives President Trump wisdom, and to those around him, I do really like Whitney Webb. I like her too. And, you know, I had some, I know my wife used to interview her and she thought the world of her, but one thing I did notice is when I was in Holland last year, okay, or the Netherlands, I guess, we went out there for Naomi's book to get published in their language, and really super nice people. But when I brought up China, and these are people on our thought process, okay? When I brought up China as like, no, they're more than competition. Like these dudes, they're serious. They want to be the global hegemon. They don't care how they get there. They were like, no, that's crazy. And I said, why is that crazy? I'm not some Twitter researcher who doesn't research. They said, well, you should read Whitney Webb's book because it says that it's this network. And I said, well, I know Whitney Webb's work and it's good work, but I would say that there's always more than one bad guy. So I'm not saying she's wrong, but I am saying there's always more than one bad guy. As a matter of fact, there's always multiple bad guys, always, at any level of crime. But back to the Dugin network. So yeah, I like Whitney Webb, but again, you can be an unwitting originator. I'll put it that way. Okay. So for instance, actually, the most unwitting source of propaganda, I would say, is the Bible and the Quran and the Torah, because they whoever wrote those set out to write them for their own people, and they're used and twisted and shredded in a million different ways to push good and bad things. So how is this network set up? And I apologize. I did like 241 pages. It's the most I've ever written in the last 10 years. So we're talking about the 4-tiered structure. Okay. Now, there's precedent to this kind of anti-Israel part that the Dugin network uses. There's the BDS movement. Okay. Boycott, divestment, sanctions. Key actors were Palestinian BDS, National Committee of NGOs, student groups. This is kind of a Soros thing. Israel, the core framing was Israel's the apartheid settler colonial state. Primary tactics: boycotts, divestments, sanctions, campus activism. Peak period 2005 to 2023. Okay, another one. The campaign was called Genocide in Gaza framing. The key actors were Al Jazeera, and you guys might want to get a notebook and write some of these things down. I'll provide the notes, but what you're looking for is you're really looking for common threads, especially in people. So Genocide in Gaza framing. Al Jazeera were the key actors. The Gray Zone, Drop Site News. That's where Kim Iverson came from. I'm sorry, she used to work with Ryan Grimm. Mint Press and activist media. Israel core framing: Israeli actions as genocide and ethnic cleansing. Now, these are mostly left-wing people. Primary tactics: viral social media, lobbying, protests, coverage. That's ongoing. Israel lobby controls the U.S. This is the tale as old as time. And I would really just tell you guys, like, seriously, just look it up. You could see who pays the most in lobbying. Yes, people will always counter and say, yeah, but the AIPAC's not foreign lobbying, so they don't count that money. Everyone gets tons of money from everyone. AIPAC supplies everyone. The China lobbies, the Chevron lobbies, everyone. Okay? And I'll say officially, the amount of money from Israel for lobbying, and you can look this up anywhere, go to Open Secrets. It falls behind the Marshall Islands and the Bahamas. Who's at the top? China. Okay. Not saying they're not lobbying, wanting things that we don't agree with, but I'm just saying this whole Israel lobby controls the U.S. is ridiculous on its face. And don't just look at lobbying, look at foreign investments in the United States. For example, do you know there's 2 high-rises in New York City that are the Bank of China? Do you know that, let me see, the T, the BART, the L, the MTA, all those trains are made by CRRC out of Springfield, Mass., which is a wholly owned Chinese company. They have all the contracts to make our commuter cars. They have our infrastructure. So, when you think influence, use some common sense. It's like, who has the most contracts? Who puts the most people in office? I can guarantee any of the Israelis. I'm not shilling for them. I'm just saying this is common sense. Okay. Who spends the most money? Who has the most investment in this country? Who owns the most farmland in this country? Who owns the most water rights in this country? I don't know the answer to all these. I can tell you China's at the top of those. And who's the one country that said they want to be in charge? They want to unseat the U.S. as the global hegemon by 2049. China. They've said it. It's official policy. It's not like, when people say, oh, Israel and the greater Israel, and they want to build the third temple. That stuff was all created by the Dugin network. That stuff was all, and a lot of these are rehashed from the, the Chronicles of the Elders of Zion, that debunked piece of Tsarist propaganda from 1915. A lot of that stuff is there. But what happens is people don't research anymore. They get emotionally caught up in it, and it's just easier to just get mad and think that all the bad things in your life are because of those people. That's what the Nazis did to get people riled up. That's what every country does to get people riled up. Hell, we did it to the Asian Americans during World War II. Don't fall for it. If you're getting emotional, take a break, count to 10, shut off the computer, go take a walk, do what Sherlock Holmes used to call a diffusion exercise. Something where, like driving, without your phone, taking a shower, taking the dog for a walk, just take a break, okay? Because if you're getting emotional about something, that means your adrenaline is kicked in. Adrenaline is one of the most addictive substances in the body, and it clouds your judgment. This is the same reason why boxers sit there and glare at each other at the weigh-in. They're trying to get each other's adrenaline going so they drop their strategy. Don't fall for it. Anything that's emotional, get the hell out of there. Anytime someone says, yeah, but what about the children? That's not real research. It's important, but it's not real research unless they're researching children. Anyone that says, oh, they hate us, prove it. Always, always, always make people go to the facts. Okay, other examples of ongoing, historical and ongoing campaigns. State-sponsored campaigns, Iranian state media constantly for a long time. RIB, Press TV, RT Sputnik, Russia, CGTN, which is the Chinese station. And I will say this, they sponsored a lot of media across the Middle East and a lot of NGOs, like the Syrian Solidarity Movement. A lot of that money, which originates at China, it goes through Iran and funds everything. All sorts of things. A lot of the pro-Assad groups. The Shir Hashem Award, which is the award that funds the Gray Zone, as one of their projects. So keep that in mind. Their core framing, Zionist regime aggression. U.S. as Israeli puppet. Now, let's talk about framing. Framing is usually an indicator that you're being manipulated, and it usually takes time. So in my past work, we would say we create reality this way. What does that mean? What is framing? Framing is setting up a story where you say, oh, let's use the movie Wag the Dog as an example. Okay, in Wag the Dog, they started framing against the Albanians. Okay, now the whole point of Wag the Dog is the president had slept with the candy striper in the office, and they needed to start a war to distract from it going into the midterms. So they chose a country, the propagandists chose a country that really no one really knew much about. They chose Albania. Okay. And first they started framing about how little people know about Albania. And then they started dropping hints of like, oh my gosh, this girl with a cat, she almost got blown up in Albania. And before you knew it, the whole country in this fictitious take on propaganda, it's a great movie, were hating Albania. And I think it was James Belushi, who's from Albania, actually. He's like making pleas to the Albanian government to release this special forces unit that no one else had ever heard of either. And I think it was like the 63 or something like that, who got caught behind enemy lines in a war no one knew about. Okay, and the point is, people were so distracted by that, no one was talking about the president anymore. Okay, they were so distracted by that they weren't looking, in today's world, we get so distracted by things. We don't see the real dangers that are coming our way. And I'm sorry, I don't see the Israelis, the country the size as New Jersey, and where there's 18 million people in the world that are Jewish. I'm married to one of them. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about the freaking bio-enhanced ticks that seem to not die no matter what you do to them. I am worried about China doubling their military spending since 2020. I'm worried about that. Okay, I'm worried that Iran might have a nuke. I'm worried that we will not shut them down and we're going to lose the midterms and they're going to start launching those suckers all the way up into Europe, which we know they can do because they admitted it. I'm worried about that. I'm sorry, I'm not worried about Bodniks and the Israelis. I'm just not. That's just doesn't make any sense to me. I am worried about people that flew planes into the Twin Towers. I am worried about people that I fought in combat from Southeast Asia to the Middle East. I am a disabled combat veteran. I'm worried about them because I've seen what they can do. I've seen that in, parts of the Philippines, our own people, some of the people we worked with would do extrajudicial killings or EJKs and wonder why you weren't impressed by that. I'm worried about those people. I'm worried about people that are wired really differently than we are. Okay, that don't want to blend or assimilate into American society. They want to conquer it. I'm worried about them. That's what I'm worried about. I digress. Okay, and the last one is campus and social media wars, waves. Students for Justice Palestine, which I will say has crossover with Syria, Solidarity Movement, which has crossover again with the Gray Zone and Blumenthal. In Palestine, TikTok, Instagram activists. Their core framing is from the river to the sea and globalize the Intifada. These are the people they frame it as. The Hamas and the terrorists are actually just the underdogs who are just fighting for freedom. That's the framing. The underdog framing is very, very common. Okay, it's sexy, it's romantic, it's always the underdog. Like every time you see a movie that romanticizes some violent movements, they change it into they're the underdog. Okay, now in the 80s and the 90s, it was the Irish Republican Army and groups like that. And who, I'm Irish, but like, let's face the facts. Where are they now? Like, why aren't they fighting the Muslim invasion that seems to be happening in Ireland? Good idea maybe at the time, back when Ireland didn't have a country of its own, but that they really romanticized it. And I bought into that. I was like in high school. I'm like, yeah, man, stupid English. Well, that turned out to be right, but still, they always glorify the underdog, but never question why the underdog's the underdog. And is the underdog a dog that will bite me? Almost all the time it will. Hashtag storms, their tactics are hashtag storms, encampments, viral videos. You've seen them all. This is a left-wing thing. Still going on, by the way. All right, so the key strategies of any network are pretty simple. Left-leaning mainstream, genocide, apartheid. They like to use genocide, apartheid, war crimes, humanitarian focus. The right-leaning, they use variants of America First. For instance, they'll say Israel first with sarcasm. The U.S. was dragged into wars by Israel. Mossad, Epstein, blackmail, and then the Israeli lobby controls Congress and the U.S. government. Digital amplification. Coordination, hashtag campaigns, hashtag BDS, hashtag, and this is the left, hashtag Free Palestine, but then on the right, hashtag Not Our War. Use of short-term videos, TikTok, Instagram Reels, X clips for emotional impact. That's the point of short videos, emotional impact. And then proxy accounts and influencer networks for rapid spread. We've seen this. And if you have examples, send them to me too, because this is an growing research project. Okay, so, and I see your question there, Linda. I'll get to you in a second. Institutional pressure, university divestment campaigns, academic boycotts, lawsuits and lobbying for arms embargoes or ICC action. These are things that are happening right now, still on the left, where the flotilla people, who were also funded by the Association for Investment in Popular Action Committees, that's the other APAC that no one ever wants to talk about, the left APAC, they actually AIPAC's not even right, but you know what I mean. It's a Syrian, Russian affiliated NGO out of San Francisco. I'll put the link up to consumerdiligence.org, who did a great story on that. But they, they're doing arms embargoes and they're shutting down ports in Spain and LA and Calama up in Oregon, which that's really, really dangerous because we don't know all the wars. We don't know where weapons need to go, desperately needed weapons. We don't know if those, like shutting down a port and allowing people to have the power to stop the war machine when they don't know why the war machine is running is inherently dangerous. It's a whole nother topic. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but that's happening right now, but no one's paying attention to it because right now the left and the flotilla people and the other anti-Israel people who are really left, the BDS people, the people that shut down campuses, they're having a field day. They're having a great time. You know why? Because we're not paying attention like we used to. We're not. There's a couple out there that are. Nick Shirley, Sorter, a lot of these really good journalists, independent journalists. But the vast majority of the right is not paying attention. We're barely paying attention to Pfizer anymore. Like, what the hell, guys? We're so worried about like these, Candace nonsense and this, what are they hiding from the Epstein files? Meanwhile, our real enemies are rolling and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Take the DSA, like the Democratic Socialists of America, they're taking over zoning boards. I know because I'm undercover on one of them, where they want to run landlords out of New York City. This is happening. They're also ensuring that they're getting out the vote for the midterms. And guess what? All of these arguments that everyone thinks are so important that Candace is having and Tucker's having, I know you guys don't think they are because those people are idiots. If we lose Congress, it's over. Game over. No one's going to hear you because I guarantee Rumble will be investigated. I guarantee Substack will be investigated and shut down. I guarantee all the places you can be supposedly uncensored on are going to go away, or you yourself will get investigated. I guarantee if we lose the midterms, and I can't guarantee anything about the future, I'm just being dramatic. Look to England to see what our future will look like in the next 2 years. They will ensure, the Democrats will ensure that their person gets into the White House. Never again to have someone who's even center right. Okay? Never again. So, anyways, got off topic again, but all right, so institutional pressure. Now, there's also state-sponsored elements in all propaganda campaign or covert influence campaigns. Iran and Russia heavily fund and coordinate proxy media and influencers, big time. So does pharma. China uses the United Front-linked diaspora networks and state media for indirect amplification. This is very true. I'm actually going to have Jared Madsen, who is the MC of Shen Yun, the Chinese ballet about China before communism. He's going to come on. He's going to talk all about the counter, like the attacks from propaganda they're getting from the Chinese United Front. It's wild. Okay, let me take a break here and ask some of your questions. Pray God. Okay. Thank you. Hey, thanks, U.S. Donnie. She's from Hawaii. That's cool. Okay. Do you think the Saudis are really on Team USA? Are the Emiratis in lots of trouble? I don't think the Emiratis are in lots of trouble. I think, and I know this because I've gone to IDEX. I used to do executive protection for several clients. One of them was Northrop Grumman, so I would go to the IDEX defense show all the time, which is in Abu Dhabi. And I also come from that world of military intelligence, and I've worked with and researched so many of these things, and to this day I've kept it fresh. The Emiratis, the Gulf states, they put a lot of money into their military and their military hardware. They have some of the most sophisticated stuff on earth. Why? Because they can afford it. Okay, they can afford it because they're going to protect their position in the world, and their position in the world is granted to them by oil. They are not going to just let Iran knock them off, just like they weren't going to let Iraq knock them off. Okay, so And I talk to people every day who are in Dubai, not just people on Twitter, but I have friends who live in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I actually know a prince out there. He's from Saudi Arabia. Great guy. I don't talk to him often, but I will say Dubai is fine. Abu Dhabi is fine. I was on a space with a bunch of people in Dubai the morning that the Iran conflict started. Ian Miles Chung was one of them. He lives in Dubai. And they're like, "No, man, I'm at the Fairmont. No, nothing's happening." And they're posting videos. Here's some fountains. And then this girl got on the space who was like talking like, "Oh my God, I'm at the Fairmont," not realizing who's in the space and saying it was on fire and that it looks like Burj Khalifa is going to crumble down. And these dudes are all like, "What are you talking about? We're here. I'm at the fountain show." Like, that is not happening. So this has been a huge info war. So I don't think they're in lots of trouble. Personally, like Linda, I think they're going to benefit from this. Yeah, I have to write that one up. I don't want to just say it, but I think they're going to benefit from this because, look, the way I see it, you're one of the oil-rich countries. For the longest time, you want to do business, okay? You want to do business. You want to set prices. You might not love the Americans, but they're good consumers, and that's what matters in business: is do your customers spend money? But you always have then you have Iran. He always shows up to the business meetings and he's belligerent and he's, just horrible. And you're like, okay, great. Well, let's negotiate some terms. And then they're yelling. You're like, there'll be no terms, and they're like, dude, come on, bro. We just want to do business. We got to get a good price. You just got here late. Like, can you imagine always having to deal with Iran, where you have a split within their own country between the religious fanatics, the baby boomers, and the Gen Xers? Like, it would drive me crazy. And look, coming from a family with a ton of brothers, we're not all the same. And it's like having a nice party, and you kind of don't want to invite that one brother, because it's a nice party, but yeah, then he hears about it. Then he shows up in a t-shirt and with some grease stains on it. This has happened. And then before you know it, he's beating up the caterer. You're like, oh, dude, that must be what it's like for the Gulf states. I'm just saying, I don't know, but that's how it always has appeared to me. Because what people don't realize about the Middle East is there's definitely different classes of countries. Okay. I'm not saying any one is better than the other, but first of all, Iranians, they're not even Arabs. They're Persians, as you all know. They speak a different language even. They hate Saudi Arabia historically. They've been Shiite Sunnis, man. Like, they want to control Islam. Iran wants to control Islam. And that's been going on since the birth of Islam. But the point is, it's like, how can I say this without being... Okay, so my first time to the Middle East, I can't say where I was, but I can say this. We were working with the Jordanian Special Forces, and who was actually led by the current king of Jordan at the time. I've got a picture with him. And the Omanis, all right? And those two groups of soldiers never intermixed, never talked to each other. I would say they hated each other. They certainly did not trust each other, even though we're doing a joint exercise together. And they just, the Jordanians, they kind of felt like, oh, the Omanis think they're better than us. And the Omanis are like, I don't know why these guys got to be such D-bags. It's just ridiculous, but they never got along that well. They weren't fighting. They just didn't interact. It was weird. Okay. And then I've seen that with Saudis, and usually it's like the Gulf states and Saudi, they all kind of get along. Jordan, they kind of, Jordanians are okay. Like, they tend to get along with most people. Saudis can be tough. Iraqis, hit and miss. It just depends on the country, right? Lebanese, it's hard to say depending on what you consider someone who's Lebanese, but they tend to have the best looking actors and actresses come from Lebanon. It's just it's a big world. And I think people forget how big Middle East, North Africa, or MENA is. And it's a lot of different cultures and classes and languages even. Like, for instance, you could speak Arabic and not understand Egyptian dialect. Okay. You might say, Sabahaher in modern standard Arabic. I believe in Egyptian. It's like Zik and Nahardum. It's like totally different languages. Don't even try Algerian. You won't understand a lick. Most Arabs don't. So anyways, the point is it's very different. They don't always get. So to answer your question, Linda, do I think the Saudis are really on Team USA? I think the Saudis are on Team Saudi. Okay. And they're going to saddle up to the country that can help them the most. Okay. And right now that's the United States of America. And that's just the rule of the land. There, at these levels, there's very few ideological decisions. So this whole thing about like, oh, you did it because you hate us or you think you're better. No, it's always about money, territory, and resources. Always. Plain and simple. All right. Everything is for that. And because there's big money involved, and you don't just get to say, we're going to go get those Iranians because I'm scared of Israel and they want to build a third temple and expand Israel. And I like them. Or you're not going to be able to go to war just on that alone. That might be driving you underneath it all. But at the end of the day, you, even as the president, you got to sell this, okay, to your Joint Chiefs. You got to sell this across the board. They're going to push back. And one thing I do know about Trump, he actually does listen to people. He wants pushback, okay, according to a lot of insiders, which in my opinion makes him very smart. A lot of people are like, oh, he's dumb or everything. Hey, you know what? I don't know if he's dumb or smart. It seems pretty smart. That's done a lot, to say the least. But let's say he's not, hypothetically. Well, he's filling the room with the smartest people in the room, in my opinion. That's someone who's smart to me. There's an old story I've heard. I'll probably mess it up. I think it was Rockefeller or one of those rich JP Morgans or something. And apparently, like the academics, the elitists in New York, they were very envious. Like, why does he get to be the rich guy? Why is he the tycoon? We're super smart. We got all these PhDs. He thinks he's smarter than us. So they went to his office and they said, they offered him a challenge. The challenge was they were going to put their giant brains together, their big Einstein and scholastic and academic brains together, and come up with 3 questions that they knew he could not answer. And does he accept the challenge? He said, sure. So they worked and they had all their interns and they came up with 3 questions. They're thinking, yeah, he will never be able to answer these. They smugly delivered them to his office on the set day. And before they could leave, he reached over, hit the intercom, and he said, Jane, go have these questions answered. That to me is a smart man. Knowing your limitations and getting the help and advice when you need it and taking it. That's the point of that story. So, all right, let me see here. So, do I think the Saudis are on Team USA? And that brings up a good point too, Linda. I think whoever you're with in battle at the time when you have a common enemy is with you at that time. But don't expect they're going to be with you for the next battle. Look at us in China and Russia during World War II. Look at us with a lot of people from the left during COVID. Blumenthal, Kim Iverson, Nation of Islam. Okay, we all had a common enemy, and that was a battle, and that was good. And I think they believed in what they were doing, but that doesn't mean we agree on everything, and they're going to be our enemies at a different battle that doesn't agree with them. So I try to tell people, like, you don't trust these people just because they agreed with you on lockdown measures and all that. There's different battles, so that's really my answer. They're on Team Saudi, okay? And Team Saudi's goals seem to line up with the USA goals right now, and that's good enough for me. Alabama John said he wants to talk to you right now. He is also live on Rumble. Come over when you can. I don't know who Alabama John is, but I'll talk to him. Just tell him to DM me, Alabama John. So I'll have to look that up. All right. So, guys, it is late. It's 11:50. So tomorrow we're going to do another show. Tomorrow we're going to get deep into the tiers of this network. And I actually do have some slides, but I'm not going to put them up yet because they're still kind of messy. But we did a deep dive on this. So basically, we got the tiers. We got 4 tiers of influence. We got the multipolar Dugin network, who seems to be influencing a lot of people on the right. Okay, and it's okay to believe in that. Like, if you believe multipolarity is the way for you, by all means, that's fine. But it's not the way for America. And just so you know, let me explain multipolarity, just so everyone knows what I'm talking about. What it is in a multipolar world, what Dugin professes, and he's not the decision maker, okay, but a lot of Russian policies seem to line up with what Dugin is pushing. We'll go deep into Dugin on a whole episode. There's a lot there. But what it is that Russia believes that you should have this multipolar world where the U.S. controls like the North American region. I think they wanted Venezuela to control the South American, Central American region alongside Cuba. Russia would control the Eurasian area, China, the southern part of that hemisphere, and then Iran, most of the Middle East. And it changes over time, and don't quote me on that. But basically, we're all going to be in our little quadrants and leave each other alone. That's literally what they're selling. But it's a trap, okay? It's a trap because what do you think would happen to the United States if we had ceded power so we were equal to China, Iran, Russia, and Venezuela? You think maybe they might gang up on us? I mean, yeah, of course. And what a lot of people don't realize about the multipolar strategy is that it actually a lot of it comes from the KGB. Okay? And I know that sounds crazy and conspiratorial, but just let me get this out there because it's important that I do for this. But a lot of it comes from the KGB. Let me explain. There we go. Get to my notes here. Okay. Yes. Good Lord. I've been so productive, and it's not because I was taking methylene blue, but I have been getting better sleep, and it's been great. There we go. Sorry, I'll get there in a second. There we go. So many notes. Okay, so yeah, Yevgeny Primakov. He's an old KGB veteran who became Russian foreign minister in the 90s. He pushed this line that a multipolar world, one where no single superpower dominates, would be more stable and fair. But really, it was just a way for a weakened Russia to punch above its weight by carving up the globe into spheres of influence. And, you know, Tablet Magazine is reading this, and I did check it out. It actually all checks out. But now this multipolarity thing has been picked up by a lot of people. Tulsi Gabbard used to preach it. A lot of people did. Still do. Especially on the right, people who want to pull America out of endless wars and isolationists. And I get that. I don't want to be at war. I'm not a war hawk. They think this is a way to like stop all these endless wars, thinking, well, if we don't have to be the top dog and that'll stop the wars. I don't agree with that. I think the only way to stop wars is to be the top dog. Okay, to be the top dog and carry a big freaking stick. Okay, plain and simple. I think it's just human nature. Like someone's always going to want to be the top dog. It's not like people are going to not want to be the top dog if there is no top dog. It just always works out that way. But you know, so a lot of people on the right get into it because they're like, you know, I want to get out of the endless wars. And also, look, the one thing about the Russians are not really communists. I mean, they talk a lot about the church and traditional values. There's a lot that Dugin has said over time that I agree with, but you have to look at the overarching message. And that overarching message is we don't want you to be in charge anymore. We want all our friends to be on equal footing. And then I think the unspoken thing is so we can take you out because right now you're so big and powerful we cannot. And the Tablet article, and a lot of experts agree that this multipolarity, it's a trap. Because what sounds like a humble, realistic foreign policy is actually playing into the hands of all of our rivals, all of them, and I listed them. The U.S. is still by far the strongest power. Retreating would just give them free wins, and I totally agree with that. So in summary, multipolarity is an old KGB idea that sounds smart and restrained, but it's really a strategic trap for America. We shouldn't buy it. So and I'll give you guys all these sources. So just remember that too. Like, you're going to hear it, and I want to say this too before we go. I get it. Okay, like it's really confusing what's happening right now, because on the one hand, I don't like globalists, right? I don't like that idea at all. So you think, well, they're not globalists and they're preaching for sovereignty. The Russians have a great idea if they want sovereignty for everyone, and then we won't have endless wars. It's not true. So I get it, because the left that made our lives hell were globalists. And they agree with a lot of the Soros Open Societies network, which I see as a competing network with the multipolarity network. I don't want that either. Okay. But then the Dugin network is preaching, we got to cede some power. We got to get out of there. We got to just keep to ourselves, kind of isolationist type theory. But just like going to prison, like if you just stay in your cell, it doesn't mean you're not going to get attacked. If the United States retreats to its borders and stays in its hemisphere, it doesn't mean we're not going to get attacked. You know why? Because the strategic and grand strategies for our main rivals directly contradict that. So, for instance, multipolarity is based on this concept of Eurasianism, where the Russians do want to own like the Eurasian continent, kind of. They pretty much said it. They don't respect Ukraine's sovereignty. They say it's fake. It's not a real country. And like I said in my opening, they talk about sovereignty as long as it lines up with their vision of the world is. China does the same thing. Okay. And then you have the globalists, the Soros Open Societies people. They talk about justice and equity and let countries live and let live, let them go in their own direction. Yeah, as long as it's the direction they want you to go in. So they all have their contradictions. Okay, we don't really have a lot of contradictions, in my opinion, with Donald Trump. He will say, yeah, we're going to take that, and we do. Why is he doing it? I believe he's doing it for complete energy dominance of the world, where we will be the main providers of energy and output. It also lets us control natural gas as well as oil. And if you control that, you control China's ability to make electricity. If you control that, you can actually slow down the amount of energy they can produce to move past us in the AI race. So there's a lot of steps here strategically that I think are happening, and that's the reason they're happening. And let's not forget, the Iranian oil money funded a terrorist network that went all the way to the Mediterranean and was really being used by the Chinese to protect their Belt and Road interests. That's why the same people who are all pissed off about Assad getting put out of office and getting bombed by both Obama and Trump, that's why they're so pissed off, is not because of Syrian people. They're pissed off because their ultimate bosses, China, had their Belt and Road, and they've been trying to connect it right to the Mediterranean. Bombing Syria took care of that in 2012. Okay, and then taking out Iran, that kind of put a big gap in that Belt and Road for them. It was not good for them. And it brings things back on board, like the India-Middle East corridor, which is the competing thing with the Belt and Road. But we've kind of changed the game. We actually have the dominance right now. And if we keep going down this path, I think you're going to see the world is a much peaceful place, because no one's going to bite the hand that feeds them. Remember, the world got really, really warlike under Biden because of weakness and, I think, intentional mishandling of things like I mean, Ukraine got invaded under Biden. Afghanistan got pretty much run over. We gave it to the Taliban, who, pretty much are shepherding and, letting all the Chinese geologists come in there and build dams and mine all of those semi-precious minerals that you make the wafers for, all of your cards and everything. And you could go back and look at my original tweets. They had Afghanistan had increased exports to China by like 56% July, right before the fall of Kabul. There's a lot going on there that like people just haven't paid attention to. Like the Chinese embassy never closed during that whole thing in Kabul. And I haven't seen one body of the Israeli, of the Afghani defense military. Like they were huge. They had big halls and everything. I saved all the tweets and all the pictures that they were putting out. But where'd they all go? This was pretty good sized military. Like where'd they all go? I think I know where they went. I think they are the Taliban, or they just merged back into society. I don't think they all got killed and their bodies shipped off somewhere, because we didn't see any bodies. And a different topic. But, the point is, a lot of bad things happened when we didn't show very defined strength and freedom. And as much as we're seeing Iran, and as much as people want to make it sound like we're just blazing a trail across the world and starting wars everywhere, are we really? I mean, did we start a war in Venezuela? No. Went in and got the guy in his silk pajamas, it was done. Now we have a more friendly government there. And now we own a ton of oil. Did we start the blockades and the sanctions against Cuba? No. Did we start the blackouts they were having? No. Been going on for years, because they've never built up their infrastructure, because the money they got from China they were using to build not one, not two, but 3 Chinese bases for signals intelligence, and it looks like training. And then, of course, they had the old Russian base that was still operational there. They never lost power, but we didn't cause that. That's them. Like, they just don't take care of their people, plain and simple. And please don't tell me that they have the best doctors in the world. That might be, but they ship them all out so they can make money off them too. So what else we got here? We shut down the Houthis. I don't see much coming out of the Houthis. You know why? Because they see us as strong, and they have a history of going with the stronger people. They fought alongside Israel one time, long ago. So are we really starting that many wars? No, we're not. Okay. And I don't want to get into the current events of Iran. To be quite honest with you, I've been studying this so much and researching this so much. I just haven't paid attention. I do understand something with the destroyers going in and clearing the straits. I'm not up to date. And, this news cycle, if you miss 24 hours, you're way behind. So we'll do some updates on that. But anyways, the point is, that's what multipolarity is. What I think has happened here is Donald Trump has said, no, we're not doing this multipolarity thing. And I think Dugin and Putin really had high expectations that he's our guy. And if you go back and you look at Dugin's posts from early 2025, he's like, yeah, team Trump, go Trump. And if you look at his post now, he's like, he's a narcissist. We hate him. Like, what's he doing? Of course we're not going to cede power Russia. Come on. Seriously? No. And they're pissed off. And the open societies people are pissed off too. They've all expressed this discontent. So I don't think there's any danger of these influence networks teaming up against us, but I think a lot of stuff that they do already overlaps anyways. So it's going to get really confusing before it gets real clear. So what can I leave you with so you're not overwhelmed? That's easy. That's super easy. Start your day not on Twitter. Start your day on the White House website. See what they're putting out. Watch your press conferences live without any commentary, and then try to define what for you are the values and what America stands for. You should know what it stands for you. But if you don't, you have to have that compass. And as long as we're staying true on that azimuth, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Okay. And what can I say? Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends and neighbors. Doesn't matter if they're left, right, or center. It doesn't matter. Talk to them, and you don't even have to talk about geopolitics. Just make sure you don't lose that human contact with people, because that's when they get you, and that's why they want you on these things all the time. So I'm a real person. I'm not AI, so it's kind of like talking to a real person. But thanks for joining me tonight. I know it's been a while, and I promise when we announce the show, I will do my best just to get on there and talk, even if I'm not ready. To be honest, the only reason I didn't come on is I just didn't feel prepared. But as my friends, Jan Yakelnik and his wife Cindy Drucker over at Epic Times told me, you're never fully researched on any story. That's why you do it in parts. So I will start doing it in parts from now on. I'm not going to solve every case in one episode. But I enjoy you guys being on this journey with me. And No Longer Tired, thanks for coming way out here. And I saw you showed up a few days in a row. Good to see you. Linda, loved your questions. Come on back anytime. You guys know where to follow me on X right there on the scroller at Brian O'Shea SBI. And if you mention the show, I will follow you back. You can't DM me unless I follow you. So do a hashtag I saw the show, and I'll make sure I follow you back if it's important to you. Aloha, US Donnie. We love US Donnie. She always brings a nice, bright, shining light to the show this late at night. So we appreciate that. And I'm guessing you're still out in Hawaii. So good to see you. And, we'll look forward to seeing you again. I will announce in the mornings when I'm doing a show that night. That's the best I could do and promise you. But it is tax time, so we may have a few hiccups on Wednesday. But thanks, guys. I will get these notes out. You can find them on my Substack. The Substack is free. If you want to donate by getting a subscription, great. This takes a lot of work. I am bringing Dallas Ludlam on to be my producer, so we actually will have a producer. He's an incredible writer, too. Make sure you get over to his Substack, which is called Conservative Compass by Dallas Ludlam. If you have to choose between doing a paid over there and a paid here, I would say, Dallas has some good stuff. He's a better writer than I am by far. And he also, if you like fiction and you like Jack Reacher and Jason Bourne, and he's writing a really cool series called The Bishop Directive. And I started listening to it in my car because I have that listen thing on Substack. It's so damn good. I gotta say, I'm actually pissed he hasn't put out chapter 4 yet because I'm already hooked on it. But it's called The Bishop Directive. Check it out. That's Dallas Ludlam. I'll put it in the notes, but it's a great stuff. I just need him to write faster because I'm a bit addicted. So, all right, guys, love you all. Thanks for coming out, and reach out, and we will talk soon. And the next few episodes are going to go deep into the Dugin Network. We're also going to go into the Soros Network, the United Front, many others. What you will see by the end of this, and I hope you'll take away, is how to recognize influence ops and what to do about them so you don't get rolled up in them, because it's easy to roll people up in them. All right, we'll talk soon. This has been Brian O'Shea at Investigate Everything, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.